Hello and welcome to The Final Cut. The Arab Spring, a movement which has changed the face of the world. It has changed the way the Arab world is governed right now. It has taken down autocracies, kingdoms, and dictators who had ruled the Arab world for decades. But a lot of people are seeing the Arab Spring with skepticism. They're saying that it is a movement funded or backed, to some part at least, by the United States of America. Some are saying, like in the case of Bahrain, that Iran is also interfering. Is this Arab Spring really a revolt for change, for betterment in the Arab world, or is it just a tussle of power for resources and the advantage of tomorrow? We will be talking to Ayad al-Baghdadi, who is an Arab Spring activist and an author and lives in Dubai. Ayad, how are you?
Fine, Faisal. Very nice to be with you today.
I'll start very quickly with a question that is the Arab Spring really a revolt against autocracy, or is an upheaval engineered by the West, or in cases by Iran, as a lot of skeptics are seeing it?
Yes, the Arab Spring is truly a revolt against autocracy, but it's laid over a very bumpy geopolitical arena or region. So there are powers trying to take control of it. I mean, let's take an example. Let's say that there's a forest fire in a forest somewhere, and a corporation immediately takes use of the situation, clears out the forest, and starts to build a project over there. I mean, in a way, the Arab Spring, you can say, geopolitically speaking, it is a cataclysmic event. It's like an earthquake or a tsunami. No one expected it, no one engineered it, but everyone is trying to make use of the situation over there.
So what you're saying is it did start because of an actual need, an actual revolt against autocracy, but forces in the West and in the East are trying to take advantage by funding and financing the revolution. So is the revolution or the uprising still as if I may say, as pure and as justified as it had started to be, or you feel it has become completely tainted and a lost cause now?
For a foreign power to actually take control of the situation, it needs the strings to pull. You know, they need the puppet strings to pull, and those puppet strings don't really exist yet, because the youths themselves are not organized. I mean, it's currently chaotic, and even though of course there are counter-revolutionary attempts. If you notice how it started very fast with Tunisia and then Egypt, and then it started so fast that it shocked everyone, including the foreign powers themselves. So, maybe Egypt got through very quickly because of that. But then they actually got back to themselves, and they started to actually try to control the situation, try to play around with it. But so far, I have to say that the activists themselves, if you actually go and talk to them, whether it's in Egypt or whether it's in Libya or in Syria or wherever they are very clear about this, that we don't want to allow anyone to take control of our revolution. We are our own voice.
Okay, overall, at large, I agree with you that, because there is no organized or concerted effort, so you can't, it's safe to say that the external forces are not interfering. But we've also heard news and reports repeatedly of small groups being injected into the larger ranks who are backed by maybe the West or Iran, for that matter. Well, like in case of Bahrain, case in point.
Well, as I said, basically they are trying to control it. Of course, they are. Maybe I should just follow up on the previous question, because the main thing is that we don't really have an ideology. We don't really have a vision. We know what we don't want, but we don't know what we really specifically do want. So eventually, you can say that the Arab Spring right now is like a set of demands, a set of convictions, but it really didn't have a voice. It's a set of ideas, but not an ideology. The problem is that we have to formulate a vision. Probably that's what we need right now. Formulate a vision and say that this is specifically what we need to be, where we need to be. That's the problem right now, and that's why there's a lot of confusion.
Okay, since you said that this whole thing started without a vision, purpose, or organized agenda, but it has gained momentum. It has thrown out governments and kings and autocrats. So has it really helped the cause in any way? Because as we're seeing in Egypt, it looks like back to square one, or maybe even worse than before. So going in without an agenda, one, has that really served the purpose? B, when you do make an agenda and present it to the people, what if they don't agree with the overall agenda and say, hey, this is not what we stood for? And could that create further sub-revolutions?
It's too early to say. It's too early to actually say that, okay, this is better or this is worse. I mean, if you look at history, look at, for example, the American Revolution, 1776. 5 years later, they had one of the worst currency collapses in their history, basically because of the British interference. You know, in India and Pakistan, for example, the British pulled out, 1 million people died in intersectarian violence. In Algeria, for example, they had one of them after the French pulled out. It was a very chaotic time. So freedom is not free, but it's worth it in the end. As for your second part of the question, which is also very important, which is, I'm sorry, I forgot that.
Will the agenda be accepted by those who have created this revolution, or could there be a risk of creating sub-revolutions?
Yeah, the thing is, if you start from the convictions of the people, that's the problem with the elite. The elite, what they do is that they try to impose their own ideas and their own agendas upon the population or upon the people.
Right.
If you start from the people's convictions, you listen to what they want, and then you tailor your ideology or you tailor your solution to what they want, to their demands. Then you're actually giving them exactly what they want, the way they want it. However, if you're actually trying to impose your own ideas, you're trying to impose your own convictions, then what you're going to end up is another dictatorship. You're just going to end up you'll be replacing one tyranny with the next. And that's why I've heard it myself many times, especially in Egypt, and right now I'm hearing it even in Syria, that the youth are actually saying, don't think that we only revolted against the dictator. We revolted against the dictator, against the opposition parties, against the entire spectrum of politics that existed in our country before this point.
Okay. Do you feel similar turmoil we're talking of Syria, Bahrain is still in the happening, Iran we're hearing about, but there are other Arab countries like the Emirates. Do you feel there could be similar, not revolts, but similar demands in places like those?
The UAE was actually the third from the bottom, along with Kuwait and Qatar. And of course, the reason is, if you look at the UAE's history and its government, this is a government that has been enormously successful in giving its people both dignity and a high standard of living. So actually, people want to come here because they want to live here with dignity. They want to have a prosperous life. Of course, you cannot educate the people. Of course, of course, if you look at how the UAE was 40 years ago, you would really see a marvel. I mean, you shouldn't just look at how it is right now, but how it was before. Of course, when people become more educated, when people become more open, they get in touch with other cultures, their demands will, their visions are going to change. And there has already been a movement towards reform, towards more openness, more involvement of the people in the political process. But I want to actually take this question, it's a very good question, I want to take it outside the context of the UAE itself. We have revolutions in, let's say, in Egypt, in those 5 countries: Egypt, Yemen, Syria, Tunisia, and Libya. But what about everywhere else? Other countries, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Algeria, Morocco, etc. What's going to happen there? And I think that certain, the most dictatorial of the regimes have already seen the revolutions. The rest were not as bad, which is why we'll probably see a reform movement rather than a revolution.
Yeah, I'll come back to UAE for a second. You talked about dignity and the quality of life, and you compared UAE with Qatar and Kuwait being the bottom 3. Can you say the same about Kuwait when you say dignity and quality of life? Or if I may throw another parallel at you, all 3 of these countries are in good favor or are no threat to the United States of America right now. Could that be the reason where the least possible revolts?
Well, we're seeing kind of the same situation in Bahrain, for example, of course, where we have, it's on the right side, along with America, which is why, there's not a lot of pressure on it. Of course, as I said, there is geopolitics under, sometimes we say under the Arab Spring or over the Arab Spring. I prefer to say that the Arab Spring is actually laid over this territory. But again, I think eventually no government at all in the world can continue to exist if all the people reject it, no matter how much foreign intervention there is, no matter how much support there is from the United States. Of course, you can see, for example, Egypt and Tunisia, the two of the most loyal regimes to the West, completely toppled and eventually completely deserted by the West, because you cannot really continue to run a country if everyone hates you.
But is it not fair to say the U.S. does not only finance revolts, it could also be financing the resistance to the revolt, as we saw in the case of Bahrain?
This is exactly the hypocrisy of the United States, especially when you see that they're so pro-democracy in some cases and so pro the dictator in the other cases. Especially, I mean, if you just look at Egypt itself as a very good example, you have them backing Mubarak, calling him a man of peace, calling him a man of freedom, and a man of democracy. And a little bit later, they say, okay, this is the best revolution that ever happened in world history, and saying that it's very hypocritical. In the end, we should not be fooled by thinking that governments are actually looking for any moral position. They're looking only after their interests. We have to look over our interests too.
Very well said. Lastly, what would you say is the next step for the Arab world in the light of the spring?
Well, this is kind of a question that really hits me deep, because this is really what I'm trying to do right now with my project, the Arab Spring Manifesto. Because I'm really trying to actually take those convictions, those ideas, and blend them into a solution, a more integrated solution. Because we have tried a lot of things. We have tried the completely liberal, 100% liberal solution. The problem is that it's already failing in the West itself, economically and socially. And of course, the Islamic solution has not really been a solution. It has been a half solution. So all of these times. And you can see that the Arab masses are actually confirming that we're not really like the West, but we're kind of moderate Muslims. So I think it's very important right now to take all of those convictions. If we don't have a voice, if we don't have an ideology, if we don't have a manifesto, then the Arab Spring is doomed. This is really where we really need to concentrate. Everything else is a sideshow right now. Eventually, if we don't find our voice, we're going to lose our voice.
Yeah, very well said. You've opened another question, which I'm going to save for a later time, because you mentioned moderate Muslims. Wouldn't it be unfair to? Wouldn't it be fair to say that Muslim is a Muslim, or either you're a Muslim or not? Moderate Muslim is sort of an oxymoron in itself. But we leave that one for the next time. Thank you very much for talking to us. It's an absolute pleasure. There was Ayad al-Baghdadi. He is an Arab Spring activist in Dubai and is also working on the Arab Spring Manifesto. Those were his views. If you would like to share your comments and views with us, if you'd like to be on the show, if there are any topics you'd like us to take up, please feel free to email us. The email address is on the screen. Thank you very much for watching the Final Cut on 247online.tv. Until next time, thank you and good night. The Final Cut.